My girlfriend is insanely insecure. I mean, every single day, she absolutely demands that I check in with her right on the dot. So, there I was, desperately rushing home through a torrential downpour just to make our nightly video call. But in the very next second, the whole world flipped upside down, and suddenly, an ambulance was rushing a blood-soaked me to the emergency room. The nurse asked if she should help notify my family, but I politely turned her down. I just didn't want Chloe to worry. After all, she was on a flight right then. Telling her would only make her panic for absolutely no reason. But man, I never in a million years saw what was coming next. As I limped over to get my x-rays, I saw her, Chloe, the girl who swore she was away on a business trip, sitting there, gently holding another man's hand while he got an IV drip. Pure rage boiled in my veins. I confronted her, loudly demanding to know why the hell she lied to me, but she just stood her ground, completely unapologetic. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "So you think you did nothing wrong? Just because you got into a car accident doesn't mean you get to stop checking in. It just proves you do not love me enough." Let's rewind. I was gripping the steering wheel with one hand, swiping the car's screen with the other. The clock read 8:43 p.m. I had exactly 17 minutes left until the 9 p.m. video call Chloe always insisted on. I glanced at the cake box sitting on the passenger seat, and I couldn't help but smile. A strawberry cream cake. That crazy girl had been begging for it for 2 solid weeks. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A notification from Chloe popped up on Instagram. It read, "Boarding the plane now." Turning off my phone. "I will message you when I land in New York so you know I am safe. You better miss me." She even added a little blowing a kiss emoji. Smiling, I typed back, "Let me know when you land. Stay safe." After thinking for a second, I added, "I got the strawberry cake. We will celebrate the second you get back." Sent successfully. I casually tossed my phone back onto the center console. Outside, the windshield wipers were thrashing back and forth frantically. The rain was so heavy that the second the windshield was wiped clean, it instantly blurred into a massive sheet of water again. Man, driving in this weather is pure torture, I muttered to myself. If I wasn't rushing back for her video call, I definitely would have just stayed at the office and worked some overtime. Hitting a red light, I slammed the brakes, my fingers tapping a rhythm on the steering wheel. Because today is my 28th birthday. Just 3 days ago, Chloe started sighing and complaining, acting like some urgent project came up and she absolutely had to travel for business, flying out to New York on the exact night of my birthday. "It is all my stupid manager's fault for not saying anything sooner," she whined. "He just had to pick this exact time." Her voice over the phone was so sweet and clingy, pouring over me like thick, warm syrup. She had said, "I promise I will make it up to you when I get back. I will spoil you for 3 days straight." I just laughed it off at the time. I told her, "If you make it up to me for 3 days, I will have to take 3 days off work." She giggled. "Take them. Take them. I will stay right by your side." Honestly, I never really cared about that stuff. Back when I was single, I barely even noticed my birthdays. Hell, sometimes even New Year's Day felt like just another ordinary Tuesday to me. But Chloe cared. She always insisted that life needed a sense of ritual. So, I played along. I made sure to prepare surprises for every single anniversary, and I always showed up right on time whenever she needed me. The light snapped green. I hit the gas, and the car surged forward. The rainy night streets reflected the glowing city lights, making the road look like it was coated in a thick slick of oil. I wasn't driving fast at all, just mentally rehearsing what I would say during our video call. Chloe always loved listening to my work stories the most, like which client made some bizarre request, or which proposal had been revised 800 times. She would just sit there, giggling while munching on snacks, and say, "My director Harrison is the absolute best." Just thinking about it made me smile again. But in the very next split second, my entire world shattered. A blinding white light smashed in from the right side, paired with the deafening screech of tires burning against the wet asphalt. It sounded like someone violently dragging their fingernails across a chalkboard. My mind went completely blank. Pure instinct took over, and I yanked the steering wheel as hard as I could to the left. The impact wasn't like those cool slow-motion scenes you see in movies. It was a solid, brutal, bone-crushing collision. The airbag exploded with a massive bang, slamming right into my face. The sharp, metallic taste of blood instantly flooded my mouth. I honestly couldn't even tell if my lip was split or where the hell all that blood was coming from. My car spun violently before skewing onto the side of the road. I just sat there in the driver's seat, completely dazed for a few agonizing seconds. My ears were ringing so loudly, it felt like a few hundred bees were holding a heavy metal concert inside my brain. I tried to twitch my fingers. Thank God, they could still move. My legs could move, too, but my chest throbbed with this agonizing, blinding pain from the airbag impact, making it almost impossible to even catch a single breath. Through the shattered glass, someone was frantically knocking on my car window. Just a blurry silhouette, their mouth opening and closing, but I couldn't hear a damn thing. I unbuckled my seatbelt and shoved the smashed car door open. Freezing rain whipped across my face, snapping me completely awake. I looked down. A massive, horrifying stain of red was blooming across my crisp white shirt. Blood trickled into my eyes from a gash on my forehead. "Hey man, sir, are you okay?" A delivery driver in a yellow jacket sprinted over with an umbrella, his voice trembling with pure panic. I waved him off, trying to say I was fine, but the moment I opened my mouth, I choked out a violent cough instead. Shaking, I fumbled for my phone. The screen was shattered into a spiderweb, but it miraculously lit up. My very first instinct? Check the damn time. 8:51 p.m. I still had 9 minutes left. Unbelievable. Half dead in a wreck, and I'm still sweating over a video call. Even I knew how pathetic that was. Suddenly, the piercing wail of an ambulance shattered the quiet night. Red and blue lights sliced through the freezing rain. As paramedics hoisted me onto a stretcher, I forced myself to look back at my car. The front end was completely caved in, looking exactly like an unlucky bastard who just took a brutal hook to the jaw. My birthday strawberry cake had launched from the passenger seat, splattering violently against the cracked windshield. The sweet cream mixed with the dirty rain, sliding down the glass. It was an absolutely pathetic sight. "My cake," I mumbled under my breath. The paramedic leaned in. "What was that, man?" "Nothing," I muttered. We rushed to the nearest city hospital. The blazing lights of the emergency room felt like an entirely different universe from the pitch-black, freezing storm outside. The harsh, stinging scent of clinical disinfectant filled the air, mixing with the sickening metallic smell of my own blood. The gurney wheels rattled violently against the linoleum, echoing sharply down the long hallway. They wheeled me straight into trauma. A fast-moving nurse rushed over to clean up my mess of wounds. The deep gash on my forehead needed 5 sharp stitches. My screaming ribs felt broken, so I was dragged in for an X-ray. My right wrist was badly sprained, completely swollen up like a balloon. The doctor shook his head. "You're actually incredibly lucky, kid." He scribbled on my chart. "The guy who hit you was hammered. Completely his fault. Thank God you wore your seatbelt, or they'd be putting you in a body bag right now." I just nodded slowly, totally speechless. The local anesthesia still had my forehead completely frozen and dead to the world. I stared blankly up at the blinding fluorescent lights on the ceiling, my mind entirely hollow. Once I was patched up, the nurse directed me to the IV room for a mandatory 2-hour observation. She looked around. "Where is your family? Have you called anyone to come get you yet?" I hesitated, my chest tightening. "I'll call them in a bit." Truth was, I absolutely didn't want Chloe to find out. She was mid-flight. Telling her now would just send her into a total panic for no reason. I'd wait. I'd break the news tomorrow. The IV room was just around the corner on the first floor of the ER. It was a massive, sterile space. At this hour, it was mostly empty, just 7 or 8 miserable souls scattered around. I slumped into a chair against the far wall. A nurse hurried over to hook up my IV bag. As the cold needle dug into the back of my hand, I winced in pain. The medicine dripped down, drop by agonizing drop. It was driving me insane. I pulled out my busted phone and prayed it would turn on. Miraculously, the screen glowed to life. I had a few unread messages on Instagram, just a bunch of happy birthday texts from work friends. I typed out quick replies to all of them, though jabbing the shattered glass with my bruised fingers hurt like hell. Chloe's cute profile picture sat there at the top of my inbox. Our last chat was still stuck on her final message about boarding her flight. I stared longingly at her blowing a kiss emoji for a moment, then locked my phone, letting my heavy eyes drift shut. But the noise in that room refused to let me sleep. The chaotic sounds of the hospital forcefully drilled into my ears. To my left, some guy was blasting short videos on full volume. To my right, a young couple was bickering intensely. The girl snapped, I'm literally bleeding over here and you're still playing your stupid game. Somewhere nearby, a toddler was wailing. Their tired mother was whispering soft comforts. Honestly, the hospital is where you see the messy reality of life. My patience was running thin. I tried to shift in my uncomfortable chair, but the movement tore at my stitches, making me gasp from the sharp, blinding pain. Forget it. Just grit your teeth and deal with it. The minutes dragged on. I checked my shattered screen again. 9:03 p.m. There was zero chance I could make that video call with Chloe now. I'd just text her an excuse later. Maybe I'd lie and say I got stuck at work. But just as that thought crossed my mind, a terrifyingly familiar laugh echoed from the doorway. My blood ran completely cold. No, that was impossible. I had to be losing my mind. The painkillers were definitely messing with my head. I slowly looked up. Right there, standing at the ER entrance, was Chloe. She was wearing the exact cream-colored knit cardigan I bought for her just last week. The very same sweater she swore she was packing for her business trip, because New York gets so chilly at night. She held a paper cup in one hand. Her head tilted sweetly as she chatted with the guy beside her. A radiant smile lit up her face, her eyes crinkling in that beautiful, familiar way. It was a look I had cherished for 7 long years. The tall guy standing next to her wore a gray hoodie, his left arm resting in a sling against his chest. Chloe stood way too close to him, practically pressed against his side as she carefully brought the paper cup right to his lips. "Careful, it's hot. I blew on it for you." Her voice was incredibly soft, carrying that gentle, tender warmth I knew all too well. The guy took a sip straight from her hand, flashing a smile. "You're always so thoughtful." I just sat there in my seat, frozen. Honestly, I should have reacted. I should have stood up, marched right over, and demanded, "Aren't you supposed to be in New York?" Or maybe I should have just swung my IV pole straight at their heads, but I did absolutely nothing. I just watched them like a movie I had no part in. At some point, the needle in the back of my hand had slipped out of place. A small stream of blood rushed back into the clear tube, a piercing, startling red. Chloe was supporting the guy as they walked deeper into the room. Then, she looked up. The exact moment our eyes finally met, the smile on her face completely froze. It was literally like someone had just slammed the pause button on a remote. The corners of her mouth were still tilted up, but her eyes blew wide in pure shock. It looked like something had violently shattered right behind her pupils. The paper cup trembled in her grip, tipping over and splashing hot water all over the guy's sleeve. "Ouch!" he yelped. But Chloe didn't even flinch. She just kept staring dead at me, her lips trembling with words that wouldn't come out. I slowly pushed myself up from my chair, my body stiff and painfully awkward. Maybe it was my injuries, or maybe it was something else entirely. The IV pole wobbled as I dragged it, the wheels scraping softly against the cold floor. I started walking toward them. 1 step, 2 steps. My footsteps echoed sharply in the dead quiet room. Chloe finally snapped out of her trance. Purely on instinct, she took half a step back, shielding the guy behind her. That one little gesture made me stop dead in my tracks. It was just a split-second pause, but I felt the sting vividly. How totally pathetic, I thought. Once I was 3 paces away, I stopped. First, I looked at Chloe. Then, my gaze shifted to the guy hiding behind her. Ethan. Oh, I knew that name. She still had his college photos buried in her phone. The golden boy in a basketball jersey, flashing a blinding, picture-perfect smile. In person, he looked a little older than the pictures, but he was still handsome enough. "Harrison, you." Chloe finally found her voice, but she couldn't even finish her sentence. She just stared at the thick gauze wrapped around my head, the fresh blood staining my white shirt, and the thick, dark red pooling back into the IV tube on my hand. Every drop of color drained from her face, leaving her ghost white. What happened to you?" I didn't say a word. My eyes just locked onto Ethan's plastered arm. I stared at it for exactly 2 seconds before a bitter smirk crept onto my face. That tiny movement tugged right at the wound on my forehead, making me wince in sharp pain. But I kept smiling anyway. "What a crazy coincidence," I murmured. My voice was so terrifyingly calm that it honestly surprised me. "Are you sick too?" I asked him. But my eyes, they were nailed entirely on Chloe. Ethan clearly knew exactly who I was. His face twisted awkwardly, and he opened his mouth to speak, but I didn't give him the chance. I just turned around and walked away. I violently yanked the IV pole with me, its wheels rattling like crazy against the floor. The needle ripped clean out of my hand, spraying a trail of blood droplets behind me. I didn't care. I marched straight for the exit. "Harrison!" Chloe screamed from behind me, her voice shaking violently. "Wait! Please, just let me explain." I didn't stop. The hallway lights were blindingly bright, making me squint through the heavy glare. A nearby nurse spotted the blood dripping from my hand and gasped in horror. She rushed over, panicking. "Sir, your IV. You can't just rip it out like that." I looked at her. "I'm done with it." She shook her head. "Even so, we have to dress it." "You're bleeding." I looked down at my hand. Dark red was trickling down my fingers, dripping onto the pristine floor into little crimson puddles. She was right. It needed fixing. Bleeding all over my clothes would just be a massive pain in the ass. So, I let the nurse drag me into the adjacent treatment room to disinfect the wound, apply heavy pressure, and wrap it in a fresh bandage. I cooperated perfectly the entire time. I just didn't say a single damn word. The nurse kept nagging me while she worked. "No matter how much of a rush you're in, you can't just rip a needle out like that. It is incredibly dangerous. Can't you just talk things out calmly?" I heard every word she said, but I didn't give her a response. Through the tiny crack in the treatment room door, I could easily spot Chloe at the far end of the hallway. She looked completely helpless, utterly lost in a panic. Ethan hadn't even bothered to follow her out. He was probably still lounging comfortably in the IV room. Good, I thought bitterly. At least the guy still has a shred of shame. The nurse finished taping up my bandages and gave me a few last-minute instructions. I just nodded and mumbled a quiet thank you. The very second I stepped out of the room, Chloe rushed right up to me, the edges of her eyes already rimmed bright red with tears. "Harrison, it's not what you think. Ethan, he has a stomach bleed." I cut her off immediately. My voice was dead flat, like I was asking what she ate for dinner. Or is it a fracture? Chloe choked on her excuses. "I got into a car accident," I told her. I just kept talking, rattling it off like a boring, routine work report. The other guy was drunk. He's taking full responsibility. I got 5 stitches in my forehead, and my ribs are seriously messed up. I still have to get more x-rays tomorrow. The cake was totally ruined, smashed all over the windshield. "Do you want to see the pictures?" Chloe stammered out. I didn't know." Her tears finally spilled over, streaming down her face. "I really didn't know," she cried. "When he called me, he made it sound so serious. I cut her off again. "So, you flew all the way back from New York?" I stared coldly into her eyes. 3 hours? That's pretty damn fast." Chloe was left completely speechless. She just hung her head and sobbed, her shoulders shaking violently under the lights. I watched her for a split second, and then a massive wave of pure exhaustion hit me out of nowhere. It wasn't just physical fatigue. It was that soul-crushing kind of weariness that seeps deep into your very bones, making it feel utterly impossible to even lift your feet. I turned my back on her and started walking straight toward the exit. "Harrison!" Chloe called out frantically from behind. "Where are you going?" "I'll go with you to get your x-rays." "No need," I shot back, without even glancing over my shoulder. "Go take care of your own business." Outside, the rain hadn't stopped completely, though it was finally letting up. I stood at the emergency room entrance and fished out my broken phone. The screen was totally shattered. It took me a good minute of frustrated swiping before I could even get the rideshare app to open. While waiting for a driver to accept the ride, I stared up at the sky. It was pitch black. Absolutely nothing out there. Chloe had trailed out after me. She hovered just a few steps away, desperately wanting to close the gap, but too terrified to try. She whispered nervously, "I called you and messaged you on Instagram, but you didn't reply." "My phone broke in the crash," I replied coldly. She swallowed hard and tried again. "Then tomorrow. I'll go with you to the shop to get the car fixed." I cut in. "Oh, your ride is here." Sure enough, a white Toyota pulled up right to the curb, its hazard lights blinking brightly through the dark rain. I popped the car door open, paused for one brief second, and finally glanced back at her. Chloe was standing directly under the harsh glow of the street lamp. The light beat straight down on her, lighting up her tear-stained, messy face with crystal clarity. She stared at me, her eyes swimming with sheer panic, heavy guilt, deep fear, and a dozen other messy emotions I didn't care to figure out. 7 years. I ran the tragic math in my head. More than 2,500 days. That really is a lifetime. "Harrison, wait, Harrison." She took a hesitant half step toward me. I just broke eye contact, ducked my head, and slid right into the back seat. The heavy door slammed shut, completely sealing out the rainy night and sealing away her pathetic voice. The driver caught my eye in the rearview mirror. "Where to, man?" I gave him the address to my apartment complex. The engine revved, and we sped away from the hospital without looking back. As we rolled right past the emergency room entrance, I caught one last glimpse in the side mirror. Chloe was still frozen in that exact same spot. Her figure grew smaller and smaller in the misty rain until she faded into nothing but a blurry dot. I faced forward and squeezed my eyes shut tight. The edge of the rough bandage on the back of my hand was already peeling up a bit. I pressed down hard on it. A sharp throb of pain shot through me. But honestly, compared to my busted head and fractured ribs, this tiny sting was absolutely nothing. Yeah, it was totally nothing. I holed up at home for 3 days straight. I called it resting, but I definitely wasn't slacking off. The insurance guys called, the traffic cops called, and the car dealership called endlessly. I felt like a damn customer service rep, repeating the story of my crash 800 times. By the end of it, I was completely numb to my own trauma. That night, I was just a casualty of garbage luck. Plain and simple. My ribs weren't completely shattered, just fractured, so the doc ordered strict bed rest. Getting these ugly stitches taken out of my forehead was still going to take a few more days. Whenever I stepped out with this giant gauze pad taped to my head, nosy neighbors would stare and ask, "Whoa, Harrison, what happened to you?" "Just a minor bump," I'd lie. I gave that same robotic answer to everyone. But on the morning of the 4th day, I decided it was finally time to handle some real business. I stood dead in the center of my living room, taking a long, hard look at the place I'd called home for 5 years. It was a modest 2-bedroom joint, not huge, but I had poured my absolute soul into remodeling it. There sat the cream-white sofa Chloe had picked out, looking a little faded and dingy now. The light gray curtains she had chosen hung there too. With their subtle pattern, they always looked so damn beautiful when the morning sunlight filtered through. All along the walls were framed landscape photos she had snapped back in her college days. She always claimed framing them gave the place an artistic flair. Honestly, traces of her were absolutely everywhere I looked. I walked into the kitchen, boiled a kettle of water, and brewed a cup of tea. It was this fruit and floral blend Chloe had bought, with a fragrance so sweet it was actually sickening. I took a single sip, frowned in disgust, and dumped the rest straight down the drain. Reaching into the back of the cabinet, I dug out some Longjing green tea I had bought for myself a long time ago. I brewed a fresh cup of that, and only then did I finally feel a bit more grounded. Taking a deep breath, I got to work, starting with the bedroom first. Her clothes swallowed up 2/3 of the wardrobe, meticulously categorized by spring, summer, autumn, and winter. I dragged out a massive suitcase, popped it open, and started packing them away one by one. Dresses, shirts, sweaters, and coats. I folded them with perfect neatness, making it look like a display at some high-end clothing boutique. Right in the middle of folding, my hands stopped. I noticed a dress that looked painfully familiar. It was the one I had given her for her birthday last year. Back then, she complained the color was way too flashy to wear out, but she took it anyway, promising she would save it for a really important occasion. Well, she hadn't worn it even once. Even the price tags were still hanging right there. I just stared at that dress for at least half a minute, swallowed the lump in my throat, then folded it neatly and tucked it into the suitcase. Her jewelry box was sitting right there on the vanity table. I popped it open, only to find an absolute mess inside. There were earrings missing their matches, completely tangled necklaces, and bracelets missing half their rhinestones. A memory hit me. One time, Chloe was in a wild rush to go out and accidentally knocked the whole box over. The two of us crawled around on the floor for half an hour, finally finding the very last piece hiding under a slipper. We were laughing so damn hard we couldn't even stand up straight. Shaking off the memory, I picked out the pieces that could still be worn and wrapped them gently in a soft cloth. As for the broken and mismatched ones, I thought about it for a second, then wrapped them up too, just in case she still cared enough to keep them. I couldn't really recognize the army of bottles and jars on her vanity, so I checked them out one by one. Toners, lotions, expensive serums, and creams. Then I spotted one tiny, incredibly exquisite bottle. I picked it up to get a better look, realizing it was a bottle of high-end perfume. Chloe had mentioned before that this one was crazy expensive. She used it so sparingly, only ever spraying it when she went to visit my parents. I twisted off the cap and took a quick sniff. The scent was super faint, a deeply indescribable kind of fragrance. I screwed the cap back on and tossed it into a separate bag. Next, I found a photo album tucked away in the drawer. Flipping open the very first page, I was met with a photo of the two of us. It was from the autumn of our sophomore year, taken right beneath those golden campus ginkgo trees. Back then, she rocked short hair, and I was still wearing those nerdy black-rimmed glasses. Both of us were smiling, completely carefree and so naive. Flipping further through the pages, I saw our graduation photos, the day we rented our very first apartment together, our sunny trips to the beach, and the time we spent Chinese New Year at my parents' house just last year. Picture by picture, page by page of our shared history. I slowly closed the album, but I didn't toss it into the suitcase. Instead, I grabbed some shipping bubble wrap, carefully wrapped it up in several thick layers, and set it aside on its own. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. I picked it up with a heavy sigh. It was Chloe. She had blown up my Instagram with over a dozen unread messages. The most recent one pleaded, "Can we please talk? I am begging you." Scrolling up, I read the rest of her excuses. What happened that day was truly an accident. Ethan suddenly had a stomach bleed, and he doesn't have a single family member in this city. I admit it was completely wrong of me to lie to you, but I was just so terrified you would overthink things. How is your injury doing? I want to come see you. Harrison, please just answer me, okay? I swiped away the notifications, absolutely deadpan, and offered zero reply. I slammed the phone face down onto the table and forced myself back to work. There really weren't that many things left in the study. Chloe's books took up exactly one shelf of the bookcase, mostly just novels and glossy magazines. She also had this one quirky habit. Whenever she stumbled upon a quote she loved, she would copy it down and paste it into a dedicated notebook. Feeling numb, I flipped through those pages. Her elegant handwriting densely packed every page. May there be past years to look back on with fondness, and may we share a lifetime of deep affection until our hair turns silver and gray. The mountains and rivers are vast and wide, but the warmth of this world means nothing without you, and absolutely everything because of you. All my life, I have been a firm materialist. Yet, solely because of you, I desperately hope there is a next life. Right beneath that final heartbreaking sentence, she had drawn a cute little star with a bright red pen. I stared blankly at that little star for the longest time. Then, without a word, I tore the page right out. I folded it in half, then in half again, and tucked it safely into the hidden compartment of my wallet. Shutting the notebook, I slid it back into its spot on the bookshelf. As for all the other little odds and ends scattered around, the water cup she always used, her absolute favorite throw pillow, and that goofy plush toy sitting by the head of the bed, I ripped those old sticky notes off the fridge, one by one. Whatever needed packing got boxed up, and the rest went straight into the trash where it belonged. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 massive boxes sat piled in the middle of the living room, right next to a lone suitcase. Slumping onto the floor against the sofa, I finally lit a cigarette. I didn't smoke much, only when I was dead tired or just completely done with everything. After all, Chloe had explicitly banned me from touching the stuff. She used to tell me, "If you smoke too much, you're going to die young." Back then, I just laughed and told her, "Well, then you'll just have to stick around and help me live a little longer." Looking back, what a stupid joke that was. I was only halfway through my smoke when the doorbell suddenly rang. I didn't budge. Then it rang again. This time, whoever was out there just laid on the button, blasting this obnoxious, piercing screech through the apartment. I let out a heavy sigh, crushed the cigarette, and dragged myself to the door. "Are you, Mr. Harrison? I have a delivery. Please sign here." Taking the clipboard, my eyes immediately caught the sender's name. Ethan. The return address was some hospital. Frowning, I tore the package open to find a stupid fruit basket, complete with a little card that read, "Mr. Harrison, I am so sorry for all the trouble I caused. Wishing you a very speedy recovery." Ethan's handwriting was disgustingly neat. I just stared blankly at that fruit basket for a few seconds. Then, I picked the damn thing up, turned on my heel, marched straight to the stairwell, and chucked it right into the trash chute. When I got back, the delivery guy was still standing there, staring at me like I was completely insane. The fruit was rotten, I told him flatly. I shut the door in his face, washed my hands, and went right back to packing. That little stunt with the fruit basket was just a pathetic interlude. It didn't make me feel a single thing. By evening, every last box was taped up. I called a moving van, and when the driver came upstairs and saw the mess, he asked, "Moving out?" "Yeah, just sending some stuff away," I muttered. "Where to?" he asked, so I handed him the address for Chloe's new apartment complex. The driver helped me lug the boxes downstairs and shove them into the back of his van. Right as he was about to leave, I fished a key out of my pocket. It was the spare key to Chloe's place. She gave it to me a while back, saying I could come check on her whenever I wanted. I gave that little piece of metal one final look, then flicked it straight into the roadside storm drain. It hit the water with a very satisfying, clear splash. The van drove off, and I turned around and headed back upstairs to go home. Instantly, my apartment felt entirely empty, not completely bare, but how do I even explain it? It was a suffocating kind of emptiness hanging heavy in the air. Whenever Chloe was around, she was always blasting music, humming to herself, or leaving the TV on just to fill the silence. Now, nothing. It was so dead quiet, I could literally hear the low, buzzing hum of the refrigerator. I grabbed the remote, clicked on some random news channel, and cranked up the volume. Once the noise filled the room, I finally breathed a little easier and went to grab a shower. Stepping under the scalding hot water, I let out a long, heavy sigh. Steam quickly fogged up the bathroom mirror, so I reached over and wiped it clear. Staring back at me, I noticed the medical gauze taped to my forehead was looking pretty grimy. Whatever, I might as well just rip it off. It was about time anyway. Carefully peeling back the medical tape, I pulled the pad away and finally looked at the wound. The thick, stitched-up scar looked like an ugly centipede crawling right across my skin. It looked absolutely brutal, but honestly, I didn't give a damn. I'm a guy who cares about a little scar. By the time I dried off and stepped out of the bathroom, night had completely fallen. There was no way in hell I was cooking, so I ordered some quick takeout. While I was waiting, my phone buzzed on the table. It wasn't Chloe this time. It was a massive wall of text from Ethan. "Mr. Harrison, I sent over a fruit basket earlier today. I am not sure if it arrived yet, but first of all, I want to formally and deeply apologize to you. What happened the other night was a total misunderstanding. Chloe is such a sweet girl, and she was only checking on me out of respect for our old friendship. Whatever history we had is entirely in the past. I really hope you don't get the wrong idea. Also, I heard about your terrible car accident, and I just feel so incredibly guilty. If you ever need anything, please feel free to reach out." I read the whole pathetic thing and didn't even bother replying to him. Instead, I took a screenshot, forwarded it straight to Chloe, and typed one sentence: "Keep a leash on your man." Right after hitting send, my dinner finally arrived. Just my usual order of braised chicken and rice. I sat back down in front of the TV and dug in. The news anchor was rattling on about some huge local construction project, which immediately caught my eye. Wait a second. Wasn't that the exact same project my firm had just bid on? I dropped my chopsticks and stared at the screen. The reporter announced some major new developments, showing that a few select design firms had officially made the shortlist. As the camera panned across the document, our company's name was sitting right there. Perfect. I definitely have to corner my boss and ask about our progress first thing tomorrow morning. I finished eating and was just clearing the table to wash my dishes when my phone started ringing again. This time, it was a call from Chloe. I wiped my hands dry and answered the call without saying a single word. Immediately, her frantic, sobbing voice spilled through the speaker, breathless and totally broken. "Harrison, what the hell is this supposed to mean? What do you mean? Keep a leash on my man." "Ethan, I cut her off right there. He just sent me a fruit basket, complete with a deeply sincere apology letter." Her voice faltered. "Wait, you received it? Then why did you?" "I threw it straight in the trash," I replied flatly. I could hear Chloe choking on her own breath. The kitchen faucet wasn't shut completely, dripping relentlessly into the sink. I reached over, twisted it tight, and the annoying sound finally vanished. Now, the only sound left on the line was her quiet sobbing. "Unmoved," I told her. "I packed up all your things. They are waiting for you down at your apartment's management office. I dropped the key in your mailbox. Go grab it yourself." Panic seeped into her voice. "What? What things?" I didn't sugarcoat it. "Your belongings." My tone was deadpan, totally devoid of the warmth she was used to. "Your clothes, your makeup, your books, and all those little knickknacks you left lying around my place. I even wrapped our photo album separately so it wouldn't get crushed in the box." Her voice pitched up in disbelief. "You packed up my things? Chloe's voice went completely shrill. Harrison, what right do you have to touch my stuff? We haven't even broken up yet. I let out a dry breath. Well, we are broken up now. The line went absolutely dead silent. It was so terrifyingly quiet, I actually thought she had dropped the call. After what felt like an eternity, Chloe finally spoke up, her voice violently shaking. Are you throwing us away just because of this one little thing? Just because I didn't tell you the complete truth about that one night? She cried out. Harrison, it has been 7 years, 7 whole years of history and feelings between us, and you are just going to cut in. This has nothing to do with that night, and I mean it. Then what does it have to do with? Tell me. I slowly walked over to my window, staring out at the brightly illuminated city night skyline. The glowing lights from the distant office buildings lined up in perfect rows, looking exactly like an upside-down river of shining stars. Looking at them, a flood of memories hit me. I remembered how she constantly complained I wasn't romantic enough. I remembered every single time she compared me to Ethan. I remembered how she lied, over and over again, whenever it involved Ethan, even if she claimed they were just trivial little things. Sure, she always had an explanation ready afterward. But trust isn't bulletproof. Once it gets a tiny fracture, the entire foundation slowly crumbles and falls apart. Chloe. I used her actual name. It had been a really long time since I called her that, instead of babe. I kept my voice steady. Do you remember March of last year? You told me you were heading out to a college class reunion. You claimed you were just catching up with old girlfriends, but actually, Ethan was right there with you, wasn't he? The frantic breathing on the other end instantly stopped. I let the heavy silence hang there for a moment before I kept pushing the knife in. Oh, and on Valentine's Day 2 years ago, you swore you were working late at the office. In reality, you were holding his hand at the hospital for his stomach issues. And 3 years ago, stop it, Chloe practically shrieked through the speaker. She desperately babbled that those were all just harmless coincidences. I was just afraid you would get mad. So you lied to my face, I countered. I wasn't lying. It was just a white lie. At that, I actually smiled. I really did. I had to clutch my ribs because laughing that hard sent a sharp throb of pain through my chest. Fine, I chuckled darkly. Then treat this as a white lie, too. I am kindly letting you know that you and I are completely, permanently over. She panicked. Harrison, no, you can't do this. We need to sit down and have a proper talk. I am coming over to your place right now. I furrowed my brow, completely exhausted by her drama. Do not even bother. I wiped the bitter smile off my face and delivered the final blow. Even if you show up, I am not opening that door. I ended the call, and my world finally went completely quiet. I just stood by that window for a long time, staring until my legs went completely numb. Eventually, I dragged myself back into the living room, tossed my greasy takeout box, and hauled the trash bag to the front door. I paused for a split second, a final thought crossing my mind. I grabbed the tacky pink rabbit ear slippers Chloe had left behind and chucked them straight into the garbage bag, too. Good riddance. After that, I washed an apple, slumped onto the sofa, and flipped on the TV. Some mindless comedy sketch was playing on the screen, featuring a loud crowd of people cracking jokes and roaring with laughter. I stared blankly at them. I didn't find a single joke funny, but surprisingly, I didn't feel particularly heartbroken either. I just felt totally hollow. It was as if a massive chunk of my chest had been violently scooped out, leaving a gaping hole for the cold wind to howl through. But strangely enough, it didn't hurt one bit. Suddenly, my phone lit up the dark room again. This time, it was a petty Instagram message from Chloe. I have packed up all your things at your apartment and left them with the management office. Your spare key is in the mailbox. Word for word, she threw the exact same cold statement I had given her earlier right back in my face. I stared at her childish message for a solid minute before typing back one word, received. After thinking about it for another second, I tapped out my final goodbye. Do not ever contact me again. The moment I hit send, I flipped my phone to silent mode and carelessly tossed it onto the sofa cushions. The comedy show ended, and annoying commercials started blasting. I grabbed the remote control and started mindlessly channel surfing, clicking back and forth until I finally settled on the sports network. A live soccer match was playing. I had no idea which two teams were duking it out on the field, but the game was incredibly intense. Before I knew it, I was completely drawn into the action. Outside my window, the city night grew pitch black, leaving the flickering glow of the TV as the only light in my empty living room. That apple was still sitting right there on the coffee table, only half eaten, its flesh completely oxidized and turning a sad, brownish yellow. I just curled up tighter on the sofa, my eyes glued strictly to the screen. Suddenly, a goal was scored, and the TV commentator absolutely lost his mind cheering. I shouted right along with him, letting out a hollow, "Great goal!" My voice echoed through the cold, empty room just once, before fading entirely into the silent, late night. The very next day, I dragged myself right back into the corporate grind. I still had a fresh, stark white bandage plastered across my forehead, a lingering reminder of the crash. My buddy Mark was the first one to spot it. He let out this loud, dramatic gasp and joked, "Whoa, Harrison, did you run off to star in some crazy action movie or what?" "Just a little car accident," I replied, playing it down as much as humanly possible while sliding into my seat. I tossed my briefcase onto the desk as he pressed, "Man, was it serious? Are you going to be all right?" I just shrugged it off. "I am totally fine, just needed a few quick stitches." But before I knew it, half the office had swarmed around my cubicle, bombarding me with a million worried questions all at once. I patiently brushed them off one by one, before finally raising my hands. "Look, guys, I am really okay. But I do need to ask y'all a massive favor. I can't exactly pull crazy all-nighters right now, so I am going to have to lean on you guys to carry the heavy lifting for our upcoming deadlines." I kept my tone super polite, but the message was crystal clear. Everyone on my project team knew I was the kind of guy who never pulled rank and never backed down from a brutal grind. Now that the workhorse was finally asking for a break, they instantly rallied behind me. My teammates started chiming in, one after another. "Hey, do not even sweat it, Harrison. You just focus on bouncing back. We have completely got your back if anything crazy comes up." I forced a grateful smile and fired up my monitor. My inbox was an absolute war zone, flashing a glaring 99+ unread emails. I brewed myself a strong cup of tea and started conquering the pile, email by email. Honestly, work is a beautiful escape. It keeps you way too swamped to let your mind wander into the dark places, draining away any energy you might have for pointless wallowing or pathetic self-pity. Despite what I had just told my team, I ended up grinding out brutal overtime for 3 straight days, desperately trying to catch up on the progress I lost from the crash. By the morning of the 4th day, Jim, our project manager, gently tapped my shoulder and sighed. "Harrison, man, do not push yourself to the breaking point. Your health has to come first." I just kept typing and replied, "Honestly, it is fine. I literally have nothing better to do anyway, and I meant it right now." Having idle hands felt like a literal death sentence for my sanity. The second I slowed down, my traumatized brain would instantly start looping a horrific movie reel. The blinding fluorescent lights of the emergency room that night, Chloe's deathly pale, guilty face, and that smug plaster cast on Ethan's arm. It made my blood boil with sheer frustration, so burying myself in work was a million times better than facing reality. By Friday afternoon, the rough draft for our massive design bid was finally coming together. I rallied the entire project team into the main conference room for a strategy meeting. A room packed full of exhausted but driven people stared intently at the glowing projector screen, relentlessly pitching ideas and debating back and forth. The creative energy was just hitting its absolute peak when the heavy meeting room door suddenly swung open. The young girl from the front desk poked her head inside and stammered, "Director Harrison?" Someone is out front asking to see you." I frowned. "Who is it?" She swallowed hard. She says she is your girlfriend." The receptionist looked incredibly awkward, practically shrinking under the tension. "I already told her you were locked in a massive meeting, but she said she is perfectly willing to wait." The chaotic meeting room instantly went dead silent. A dozen pairs of curious eyes snapped like lightning straight over to my face. My expression remained completely, chillingly blank. Even the red dot of the laser pointer in my hand didn't waver for a single millisecond. I coldly replied, "Tell her I am busy. I do not have the time." The receptionist nervously fidgeted. "I already told her that, but she absolutely insists on staying." I scoffed, then let her wait. I smoothly pivoted back to the screen and completely ignored the interruption, continuing my presentation. "All right, team. We were just diving into the 3rd section. The core layout design still needs some serious optimization." Without skipping a beat, I dragged that meeting on for another brutal 40 minutes. When I finally called it to an end, everyone quietly packed up their gear and filed out, their eyes darting around the room with intense awkwardness. Oh, I knew exactly what was brewing in their heads. Craving a juicy piece of office gossip is just basic human nature, after all. Taking my sweet time, I was the absolute last person to stroll out of that room. And sure enough, there was Chloe. She was lingering out in the cold hallway, miserably leaning against the wall with her head bowed low. At the heavy sound of my footsteps, she violently snapped her head up. I hadn't laid eyes on her for half a month, and it was jarringly obvious she had lost a lot of weight. The rims of her eyes were bloodshot and raw, though I honestly could not care less if it was from miserable, sleepless nights or from crying her eyes out. The second she saw me, she frantically straightened her posture, her pale lips trembling like a leaf, but no sound actually came out. I treated her like empty air, walking right past her without slowing down. "Harrison," Chloe choked out, desperately rushing forward and tightly grabbing onto my shirt sleeve. "Please, let us just talk. Just 5 minutes, okay?" There were still curious coworkers filtering through the hallway, shooting blatant, gossipy glances in our direction. Fed up with the scene, I stopped dead in my tracks and slowly turned to face her. Chloe was still death-gripping my clothes, clutching my sleeve with so much pathetic desperation that her knuckles had turned completely bone white. I shot a disgustingly cold look down at her shaking hand, then slowly dragged my freezing gaze up to her eyes. "Let go. No," she cried, her voice cracking with a heavy, pathetic sob. "You refuse to answer any of my calls, and you totally ignore all my messages. What else am I even supposed to do? I had absolutely no other choice but to hunt you down here." I aggressively furrowed my brow, completely unimpressed. "If you actually have something to say, then just spit it out." Chloe sucked in a massive, shaking breath, like she was gearing up for some grand confession. She stammered, "I swear, I can totally explain everything that happened with Ethan. His stomach bleed was incredibly severe that night, and he had literally no one else around to help him. That is exactly why I ruthlessly cut her off. So, you coldly lied to my face and claimed you were out of town on a business trip? Chloe, while you were busy weaving that perfect little lie for your ex, did you ever stop for 1 second to consider what the hell I was doing?" She broke down. I did not know. I was frantically driving, rushing my ass home just to make a video call with you, because you specifically said you wanted us to connect right at 9 o'clock. And then, I got into a brutal car crash. The entire front end of my car was completely, utterly crushed to pieces. The cake was completely splattered across the smashed windshield. I ended up with 5 stitches in my forehead and a fractured rib. I paused for a second, then asked, "You knew about all of this, right?" "I literally told you." Chloe's tears spilled over completely. She choked out, I know. I am so sorry. I've heard enough apologies," I cut in, firmly pulling my sleeve out of her desperate grasp. "Is there anything else?" I asked flatly. Can we please not break up?" She raised her tearful, pleading eyes to look right at me. "It's been 7 years, Harrison. We have so many amazing memories, from college all the way up until now. How can you just throw them all away like they mean absolutely nothing?" I remained dead, silent for a few seconds. At the far end of the hallway, a coworker poked their head out to snoop, then quickly ducked back out of sight. "Chloe," I finally spoke up, my voice entirely flat and hollow. "Do you want to know what I find the most intolerable about all of this?" She just shook her head, bitter tears streaming continuously down her face. I looked right at her. "It's not even that you're still secretly talking to Ethan, and it's not that you lied to my face. It's that when I was bleeding in the hospital, your very first instinct was to shield him with your own body. That kind of subconscious knee-jerk reflex. That doesn't lie." Chloe completely froze. "You were fiercely protecting him, even when the person standing right in front of you was me, your own boyfriend." I smiled slightly, a bitter trace of irony hitting me right at that exact moment. I knew right then that I haven't been the top priority in your heart for a very, very long time. "No, I just panicked back then. I didn't know what to do." I coldly interrupted her excuses. "Then don't bother doing anything at all. Let's just leave it at that," I said heavily. "It's honestly better for everyone." I turned my back on her to leave. "Harrison!" Chloe cried out frantically from behind me. "How can you be so incredibly cold-hearted? To just cast all our feelings aside and cut things off without a single second thought?" I didn't even look back. Chloe's voice grew increasingly frantic and desperate. "I'll change. I swear I will never, ever see him again. I'll delete every piece of his contact info right now. Please, Let's just start over. I promise you. I sighed, replying with sheer impatience. You've made those empty promises way too many times before. I stopped walking, turned my profile toward her, and said, Chloe, the year you swore you would study hard for your English exams. You totally failed the test. Junior year, you said you were finally quitting sugar, yet you're literally still drinking sweet bubble tea right now. After we started working, you promised you'd stop staying up so insanely late just to binge-watch random TV shows. But just last month, I caught you wide awake watching variety shows at 3 o'clock in the morning. I paused for a heavy moment, fixing my cold gaze on her. Some things just can't be magically fixed by making a flimsy promise. After dropping that harsh truth, I took large, decisive strides forward, never stopping for her again. Chloe stood frozen in place, her shoulders shaking violently as she sobbed uncontrollably in the hallway. The girl at the front reception desk couldn't bear to watch the pathetic scene any longer. She brought over a pack of tissues and gently said, Ma'am, please try to stop crying. Here, wipe your tears. Meanwhile, I walked straight back into my private office and firmly shut the door on my past. Outside my window, the evening sky gradually darkened, and the sprawling city lights flickered to life one by one. I stood quietly by the glass and lit a much-needed cigarette. Halfway through my smoke, my phone sharply vibrated. It was a massive wall of text from Chloe. I know I was wrong. Terribly, horribly wrong. I never should have lied to you. I never should have chosen to stay by his side at that critical moment instead of staying right there with you. But Harrison, please believe me. My feelings for you over these past 7 years were completely real. I stayed up countless nights with you to rush your design projects. I helped you take care of your sick mother when things were tough. And I stayed loyally by your side, all the way from renting that cramped apartment to finally buying a house together. Have you really forgotten all of that? Please, just give me one more chance. Just one last time, I am begging you. I finished reading her desperate pleas, but I didn't type a single word back. I coldly stubbed out my cigarette, flipped open my laptop, and buried myself back into my work. By 8 o'clock that evening, practically everyone else in the entire company had clocked out. I finally shut down my computer and packed up my things, mentally preparing to head home. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my buddy Jim. Yo, Harrison, you haven't left the office yet? Perfect timing. Let's grab dinner together tonight. I want to introduce a good friend to you. What friend? I texted back. Jim quickly replied, someone from the client's side, the main person in charge of our huge bidding project. She's actually pretty cool. It's always smart to make solid contact in advance, right? I thought about it for a second and replied, sure thing. Where to? The exclusive address Jim sent over was for a high-end private kitchen restaurant. I hailed a cab and headed over. The evening city traffic was a bit heavily congested on the way there. I leaned my tired head against the cool car window, quietly watching the bright neon lights flash past until they blurred into a hazy streak. By the time I finally arrived, Jim was already chilling in the VIP private dining room. Sitting right beside him was a striking woman. She looked to be in her early 30s, rocking a sleek short haircut and a crisp white blouse that made her look incredibly professional. Come on in, man. Let me formally introduce you to, Jim said enthusiastically, immediately standing up from his seat. This is Vivienne, the lead project manager from the city investment side. Vivienne, meet our company's top design director, Harrison. Young, brilliant, and incredibly promising. Vivienne gracefully stood up, extended a confident hand, and smiled. Director Harrison, it's a pleasure. I've actually heard quite a lot about you. Ah, you're way too kind, I replied warmly, shaking her hand with a firm grip. Please, just call me Harrison. With the ice officially broken, the three of us took our seats. Jim eagerly took charge of ordering the expensive food, while Vivienne and I naturally fell into an easy, flowing conversation. I honestly thought it would just be dry, polite, corporate small talk, but as we kept chatting, we quickly realized just how remarkably like-minded and in sync we truly were. Vivian also had a background in architecture before making the jump into project management. She was super into our company's proposal, firing off questions that hit the nail right on the head. I tackled every single one of them. The two of us fell deeper and deeper into the conversation, completely leaving Jim out in the cold. Hey, I think you two have had about enough, Jim chimed in, half laughing, half sighing. We're supposed to be eating here. Why on earth are we talking about work? Vivian laughed softly. I'm sorry, Savin. It's an occupational hazard, she added. She picked up her teacup, gave me a small toast, and said, I've truly witnessed Director Harrison's professional capabilities today. I really hope we get the chance to work together in the future. I appreciate the kind words. I raised my cup to hers. The dinner stretched on until past 9 o'clock. Jim had some business to take care of, so he ended up leaving first. Vivian and I stuck around for a little bit longer, just shooting the breeze about things going on in our industry. Vivian was incredibly easy to talk to, but she was also a fantastic listener. Whenever she did chime in, her quick remarks always cut right to the core of the issue. When the check finally came, we both fought over who would pay, but in the end, Vivian won the battle. This meal is totally on me, she insisted. Just consider it an early celebration for a successful partnership. I decided not to push it any further. All right, but next time, it's my treat, I told her. It's a deal. Leaving the restaurant, the cool evening breeze hitting our faces felt amazing. Vivian's car happened to be parked right across the street. How are you getting back? She asked me. Just take my car. Oh, no need, I replied. I'll just catch a cab. But Vivian shook her head. It's not easy to hail a ride at this hour. She glanced down at her phone and added, Plus, it's on my way anyway. Just let me drop you off. I hesitated for a split second, but eventually caved and got into the passenger seat. Soft music was playing through the speakers, and the air inside smelled incredibly fresh. It was nothing like Chloe's car, which always reeked of heavy perfume. Vivian drove smoothly, staying pretty quiet, only speaking up occasionally to ask which way to turn. While we were stopped, waiting at a red light, she suddenly looked over and asked, Hey, is that injury on your forehead all right? I completely froze for a second, only just remembering that I still had a bandage taped to my head. Oh, it's fine, I brushed it off. It's practically healed. Well, that's good to hear. The light turned green. She stepped on the gas and softly warned, Look, no matter how hard you push yourself at work, you still need to make sure you stay safe. Thank you, I murmured. Soon enough, the car pulled up right to the front entrance of my neighborhood. I hopped out of the passenger seat and thanked her again. Vivian rolled down her window and called out, Hey, regarding that bidding project, feel absolutely free to reach out anytime if you need anything. Will do. And also, she paused for a moment before continuing, please don't put too much pressure on yourself. I can clearly tell that your headspace hasn't been quite right lately. I forced a smile and asked, Damn, is it really that obvious? She chuckled. In our line of work, we're pretty good at reading people. Vivian flashed a warm smile and then prepared to drive off. Make sure you get some rest early, she told me. Her car smoothly merged into the traffic, the red taillights blinking before completely fading out into the dark distance. I just stood there at the neighborhood gate, pulling out a cigarette and lighting it up. But after barely taking 2 drags, my mind wandered back to that crisp, fresh scent lingering inside Vivian's car. Feeling suddenly guilty, I snuffed the smoke out and started the walk back to my place. As I finally neared the bottom of my apartment building, I caught sight of a shadowy figure standing right there. It was Chloe. She must have been waiting out there for a really long time, leaning heavily against the brick wall, half crouched on the concrete, totally lost in her own thoughts. The second she saw me, she shot up and marched right over. What the hell are you doing here? I asked, my brow furrowing slightly. I tried calling you, but you never answered. She shot back. Chloe's voice trembled with a mix of frustration and desperation. And you completely ignored all my Instagram messages too. I had absolutely no other choice but to come all the way down here and wait for you. Were you that busy? She demanded. Then her tone shifted. Ethan came to see me. She stared intensely into my eyes, desperately searching for some kind of reaction. He told me you threw away that entire fruit basket he sent to you. I gave a cold, unenthusiastic hum in response. Why? She pleaded. Chloe's voice pitched up, cracking slightly as she defended him. He only wanted to apologize to you. Did you seriously have to be so cruel about it? Yeah, I did, I replied coldly. I absolutely do not need his pathetic apologies. Harrison, when did you become so incredibly petty? Chloe choked out, her eyes rapidly turning completely red. Look, I'm the one who lied to your face, okay? I'm the one who was entirely in the wrong, she cried. But Ethan is totally innocent in this. The guy hasn't even fully recovered yet. Literally the very day he got discharged from the hospital, he went out of his way to send that over to you. I brutally cut her off. Does his condition have a single damn thing to do with me? Chloe, let's get one damn thing completely straight. This mess is strictly between you and him now. Stop trying to drag me back into your drama. How can you sit there and say you aren't involved? If it weren't for you, if it weren't for me, what I let out a harsh, ironic laugh. Oh, so if I hadn't caught you two sneaking around, did you both honestly plan to just keep up the charade? You were just going to keep lying straight to my face, I spat, while that bastard kept playing the poor, innocent victim. You two could have just kept putting on this big, dramatic show of deep, tragic affection, all while I played the absolute fool cheering from the sidelines. Chloe immediately choked up, standing there completely speechless as my words hit her. The midnight wind blew past us, carrying a sharp, biting chill. I pulled my jacket tight around my chest, suddenly feeling deeply, overwhelmingly exhausted. Just go back home, I finally said, my voice empty. Stop standing out here in the cold. I'm not leaving, Chloe fired back, staring me down with complete, stubborn defiance. Not unless you promise me right now that we're going to sit down and have a proper talk. I let out an impatient, irritated breath. Everything that needed to be talked about is already finished. We're done. No, we have never, ever had a proper talk, she suddenly screamed, her emotions completely spilling over the edge. She snapped, you just blindly blame me and keep a running tally of my sins. Harrison, in these 7 years, have you really never made a single mistake? When you get caught up with work, you vanish for days. You forgot my birthday, and you forgot our anniversary, too. Have I ever once complained about that? I've always been understanding and gave you space. But what about you? Have you ever shown me that same grace? I just stood there, staring at her in dead silence. Chloe wiped away a stray tear, her voice trembling. Yes, I lied to you, and I know I was wrong. But do you even know why I lied? It's because you fly off the handle the second you hear Ethan's name. I was terrified to tell you. I was so afraid you'd blow up and pick a massive fight with me. I honestly thought everything would go back to normal once he recovered. I scoffed. So, you're saying this is all my fault? I didn't mean it like that. That's exactly what you mean. I nodded slowly, a bitter smile on my face. Fine, then I'll admit it. It's my fault. I wasn't thoughtful enough. I wasn't careful enough or attentive enough to your needs. So, naturally, it was perfectly reasonable for you to run back to Ethan. I didn't mean Chloe. I cut her off, my voice dropping to a heavy, exhausted whisper. Let's just stop torturing each other, okay? She looked up at me, tears streaming endlessly down her face. Over these past 7 years, I breathed out. I really did my best. I couldn't give you the fairy tale romance you wanted, and I clearly couldn't give you the sense of security you needed, either. Ethan can give you all of that. So, go to him. I won't stand in your way anymore. I don't want him. Chloe was practically screaming now. I want you, Harrison. I only want you. But I don't want you anymore. The moment those words left my mouth, the air in the room completely froze. Even I hadn't expected to say it so bluntly. But strangely enough, saying it out loud made my chest feel incredibly light, as if a crushing boulder had finally been lifted off my shoulders. Chloe's face went frighteningly pale, drained of all color. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. In the end, she just shook her head, frantically shaking it back and forth in total disbelief. I turned my back on her and walked straight toward the building. Harrison, she sobbed behind me, her voice completely torn apart by grief. You'll regret this. You will definitely regret this. I didn't even bother looking back. The elevator doors slid shut, and I slowly began my ascent. My cold expression stared right back at me in the elevator's mirrored walls. The edge of the bandage on my forehead was peeling off a bit. I reached up and pressed it flat with a sigh. As soon as I got home, I jumped into the shower. Letting the scalding hot water wash over me, the agonizing tension in my muscles finally started to melt away. Right after stepping out of the shower, my phone buzzed on the counter. This time, it was a text from Vivian. Are you home yet? I kept tossing my wet hair with a towel and texted back. Yeah. Thanks so much for everything today. You're welcome. By the way, are you free next Wednesday? There's an architectural forum happening that looks pretty interesting. Do you want to go check it out together? I stared blankly at the glowing screen for a long moment before finally typing out, sure. Hitting send, I looked out the window at the pitch-black city night. The faint hum of passing cars drifted in from the distance, sounding just like the steady, drawn-out breathing of the city itself. I flicked off the lights and crashed onto my bed. My pillow carried the crisp, faint scent of fresh laundry detergent, a clean lemon scent from freshly changed sheets. I buried my face into it, took one long, deep breath, and finally closed my tired eyes. I passed out almost instantly, plunging into a deep, dreamless sleep. From there, the days started flying by, passing as quickly as flipping through the pages of a fast-paced novel. Slowly but surely, my life settled into a brand new rhythm. Every morning, I was up by 7 o'clock, brewing black coffee, tossing bread in the toaster, and catching up on the morning news. After clearing my plate, I'd leave the house exactly at 8 o'clock, catching the subway on line 4, then transferring over to line 2 to make it to the office just before 9 o'clock. Come noon, I'd grab lunch with my coworkers, either ordering some quick takeout or heading down to the building's cafeteria. In the evenings, assuming I wasn't stuck doing overtime, I'd crush a solid hour at the gym or just kick back with a random movie. My routine became so insanely regular, I barely even recognized myself anymore. Jim even poked fun at me one day. "Harrison, dude, are you trying to become a monk or something? There is absolutely zero trace of worldly indulgence left in you." I just laughed it off and kept my mouth shut. Honestly, I thought this new vibe was pretty damn nice. It was peaceful. Chloe didn't try tracking me down again, though she did slide into my Instagram direct messages a few times. They were never long, just random, casual little remarks. Stuff like, "The temperature dropped today. Make sure to bundle up." Or, "I saw on your feed that your project won the bid. Congratulations." Sometimes it was, "I passed by your favorite bakery and saw it close down. What a pity." I never replied. But I didn't block her either. I just left the messages sitting on read. Going out of my way to block her would just look way too deliberate, as if I actually still cared. It was honestly better to just let it be and treat her like a total stranger. But out of nowhere, Ethan suddenly popped back into my life. That day, I was completely zoned out, sketching blueprints in my office. The receptionist knocked and peeked her head in. A deeply weird look plastered across her face. She cleared her throat. "Director Harrison? Someone is here to see you. He claims he's a friend of yours." "Who is it?" "He said his last name is Lee. His name is Ethan." The pen in my hand completely froze. I slowly looked up, mulled it over for a split second, and smirked. Let him in. By the time Ethan swaggered into the room, I had already gone right back to casually organizing my blueprints. The office was small, just a desk, 2 computers, and walls plastered with design drafts. Ethan lingered at the door, scanning the room before finally locking his gaze dead onto me. "Mr. Harrison, sorry to bother you." I just pointed to the empty chair across the desk. "Take a seat." Ethan sat down, dropping a fancy paper bag onto the desk. "Just a little something," he said smoothly. "I heard you're a big fan of good tea." I gave the bag a cold, hard look. I didn't say a single word. Leaning back in my chair, I crossed my arms on the desk. "Is there something I can help you with, Mr. Lee?" My voice was deadpan, treating him like any other walk-in client. That icy reception clearly rattled him. He cleared his throat, shifting awkwardly. "Well, it's like this. I heard your firm has been bidding on that massive commercial complex over on the east side of the city. I actually happen to have a friend over at the planning bureau there, Mr. Lee," I cut in sharply, slicing right through his pitch. "If this is official business, you need to go through the proper channels. But if this is personal," I let the silence hang for a heavy second. "Then there doesn't seem to be anything personal for us to talk about." Ethan choked on his words, his face tightening, but he quickly slapped on a fake plastic smile. "Mr. Harrison, please don't misunderstand. I just came to apologize for last time. That whole mess at the hospital, tossing you that fruit basket. I was totally out of line. It was careless of me." I just kept staring at him in dead silence. Ethan pushed on, his voice dripping with forced earnestness. "Chloe, she really hasn't been doing well lately. I know it's not my place to say this, but this whole nightmare started because of me, and the guilt is just eating me alive. If it's possible, I hope you can give her one more chance, Mr. Harrison, just so the two of you can sit down and really talk." I raised an eyebrow. "Talk about what?" "About what you two had," Ethan urged. 7 whole years of feelings. You can't just let it all fall apart like this. Besides, Chloe told me she regrets everything. She cries her eyes out every single day. "Mr. Lee," I shut him down again, my tone remaining absolutely flat. "Let's get one thing straight," I said. "First, Chloe and I are already broken up. This is a matter between her and me, and we sure don't need a third party stepping in. Second, whatever white knight act you're pulling for her is your business, but do not bring that cheap theater into my office. And third," I pushed my chair back, stood tall, and marched straight to the door. The door is right over there. Take care. Ethan's pathetic smile vanished instantly. He shot to his feet, glaring daggers at me. Mr. Harrison, aren't you acting a bit too cold-hearted here? I didn't blink. I only show mercy to people who actually deserve it. I yanked the door wide open. And for you? It's completely unnecessary. Ethan's face went ghostly white. He shot me one last venomous glare, snatched his paper bag, and stormed out. I slammed the door shut, dropped back into my chair, and grabbed my pen to finish the blueprints. The scratch of the pen on paper filled the quiet room very soft, very steady, and completely unbothered. Half an hour later, my phone buzzed. A text from Chloe. Did Ethan go see you? I'm so sorry. I had no idea he was going there. I read the message, let out a slow breath, and didn't bother typing a reply. I just flipped the phone face down on the desk. Outside, the afternoon sun was absolutely brilliant, casting a warm, golden glow across my messy design drafts. Squinting into the light, a ghost of a memory hit me back in college, when Chloe and I would spend hours hunched over blueprints in the campus library. She used to press her shoulder against mine, mesmerized by my sketching, until she'd slowly drift off to sleep right there on the desk. I used to drape my jacket over her shoulders and just keep drawing. Man, those years really vanished in the blink of an eye. I shook my head hard, scrubbing the nostalgia from my brain. I got up, hit the break room, and brewed myself a fresh, steaming cup of tea. The dried leaves uncurled in the boiling water, heavy and slow as they drifted to the bottom of the cup. Staring at them, it suddenly clicked. Some things in life are exactly like these leaves. Once they've been steeped, the flavor is gone, and trying to force a second cup is just a miserable waste of time. The massive commercial bidding project finally entered its brutal last phase. I was running on fumes, working overtime for days on end, until my feet barely touched the ground. I wasn't crashing into my bed until way past midnight every single night. One rainy night, I was standing outside the office lobby, freezing and desperately trying to flag down a cab. After 20 miserable minutes of getting ignored by empty taxis, I was seriously debating just hiking it back to the subway in the pouring rain. Suddenly, a sleek white SUV splashed to a halt right in front of me. The tinted window rolled down, revealing Vivienne. Director Harrison, leaving work this late? I gave a tired nod. You worked overtime too? She smirked. Just a long meeting. Vivienne flashed a small, knowing smile. Where are you heading? Let me give you a lift. I waved her off. No need to trouble yourself. I'll just grab a cab. Vivienne didn't take no for an answer, popping the passenger door open herself. In this storm, at this hour, you won't get a cab even if you wait here until dawn. Get in. It's on my way anyway. I hesitated for a split second, but finally caved and slid into the warm car. The cabin still had that same fresh, intoxicating scent lingering in the air. But this time, I finally pinned it down. It was the sharp, sweet smell of grapefruit. Vivienne flicked on a soft piano track. Outside, the rain lashed heavily against the car window, drumming a relentless, heavy beat. Yet inside the cabin, the silence was thick and peaceful. Vivienne broke it first. I heard your new proposal is killing it out there. We went over it in the internal meeting, and the board gave it top marks. Thanks, I murmured, keeping it brief. Honestly, it's mostly the team grinding it out. Don't play coy with me, you're way too modest. She shot me a knowing look. Jim told me you've been an absolute beast lately, like you're running on pure adrenaline. I forced a slight smirk. You know Jim, he loves to blow things out of proportion. Oh, I doubt he's exaggerating. Vivienne flicked on her turn signal, the rhythmic clicking filling the space. I've watched plenty of people completely crash and burn after a nasty breakup, she noted. Not many guys weaponize that pain and pour every ounce of it into their work like you do. I let that hang in the air, offering zero response. I just stared out the window, watching the rain bleed down the glass in jagged, blurry streaks. I actually got divorced 2 years ago, Vivienne dropped casually out of nowhere. That snapped my attention right back to her. My ex-husband cheated on me, she continued, with his little assistant. She spoke with this chilling calmness, like she was summarizing a movie she barely watched. Letting out a breathy sigh, she added, The kicker? The day I caught him happened to be our exact 5th wedding anniversary. He had booked a fancy restaurant, bought the expensive flowers, and even wrapped a thoughtful gift. The guy truly deserved an Oscar for that act. I was completely speechless. Vivienne just shrugged. I didn't scream. I didn't throw plates or make a scene. First thing the next morning, I marched straight into a law firm. We drafted the agreement, pushed the ink, and the whole nightmare was legally finalized exactly 1 month later. Looking back on it now, I'm honestly kind of impressed with myself. How the hell did I stay so ice cold? I leaned in a bit. And what happened after all that? Vivienne just chuckled softly. After that, just look at me now. Work, hitting the gym, and grabbing the occasional drink with the girls. It's a damn good life, honestly. The car rolled to a smooth halt at a glaring red light. The wipers slashed back and forth across the glass, beating a steady, hypnotic rhythm. What I'm really trying to tell you is, Vivienne turned her sharp gaze directly onto me. Some things are just dead weight. Once they're in the rearview mirror, leave them there. The more you obsess over the past, the more it drags you down into the mud. It's always better to just push the pedal and move forward. You've got a long, open road ahead of you. The light flicked green, and the engine roared back to life. I let the engine hum for a minute before whispering, "Thank you for that. Don't mention it." Vivienne smiled. "Just take it as a free nugget of wisdom from a veteran of the Heartbreak War." Minutes later, her sleek ride eased up right to the front gates of my apartment complex. Just as my hand hit the door handle, Vivienne called out, "Hey, don't forget about that big industry forum next week." "Got it. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I'll shoot you the details when it's time." Sounds like a plan. By the time I finally unlocked my front door, the clock was hovering right around midnight. I stood under a scalding shower, hoping to wash off the day, but tossing in my cold bed, sleep just wouldn't come. Defeated, I grabbed my phone and started mindlessly scrolling. And there it was. Chloe had just posted an update, a gloomy, dark photo out a window with the tragic caption, "All alone on a rainy night." The location tag glaring back at me, the local hospital. I froze, staring at that glowing screen for a few agonizing seconds, before forcing my thumb to swipe past it. Next up was Jim flexing some obnoxious team dinner photo. Below that, Mark spamming pics of his cat, buried under a mountain of cheap ads, cheesy hustle quotes, and tired jokes. I kept doom scrolling for a bit, felt a wave of absolute apathy wash over me, and just chucked the phone onto the nightstand. Lying there in the pitch black, my eyes were wide open, locked on the ceiling while the rain battered my window. Vivienne was totally right. The past is just the past. But if that was true, why did my chest feel like someone had scooped out a huge chunk of it? It wasn't a sharp pain. No, it just felt echoing and hollow, like a vacant room. And the absolute worst part was, I couldn't even figure out what exactly I was missing anymore. Unwanted memories flooded in. I remembered how terrified Chloe used to be of thunder. Every single storm, she would scramble right into my arms, shivering like a leaf. She would cover her eyes and whimper, "Harrison, look, Harrison." And I would just rub her back, whispering, "I've got you. There's nothing to be afraid of." Right now, thunder was ripping the sky apart, and she was sitting completely alone in a sterile hospital ward. Is she terrified right now? I cursed, tossing violently and burying my face deep into the pillow. "Shut it down. Stop thinking about her." I aggressively ordered myself. It's dead and buried. The next morning was Saturday, a day I almost never wasted sleeping in. But after that restless night, my heavy eyes didn't flutter open until the clock was dangerously close to noon. Harsh sunlight knifed through the gap in the blackout curtains, slashing a bright line across my floor. I dragged myself up, brewed some black coffee, shoved bread in the toaster, and flipped open my laptop at the table. Sitting right at the top of my inbox was a fresh, unread email from Vivienne. It laid out the exact, minute-by-minute schedule for next week's big forum. I quickly shot back a received and ready reply, then dove headfirst into my weekend grind. Right in the middle of crushing my emails, the doorbell suddenly shrieked. I frowned hard. Who the hell would be bothering me at this hour? I stalked over and squinted through the peephole. My blood ran completely cold. It was Chloe. She was just standing there gripping an insulated thermos, her face hauntingly pale, and her eyes completely red and swollen from crying. My hand hovered over the lock, but I didn't open it. The doorbell blared again, then again and again, ringing out like some kind of frantic, desperate alarm. I gritted my teeth and turned my back to the door. Just as I took a step away, my phone violently buzzed in my pocket. A new message from Chloe. "Harrison, please. I know you're in there. Just let me say a few things and I promise I'll walk away forever." I stood frozen dead in the center of my living room, staring intensely at that wooden door like it was a ticking bomb. After about a minute, I walked back over and pulled the door open. Chloe's eyes lit up the second she saw me, but that spark quickly died out. She held out an insulated flask, her voice trembling. I made some soup for you. You've lost weight recently. No need. I didn't reach for it. If you have something to say, just say it. Chloe's hand froze dead in midair. Biting her lip, she slowly placed the flask on the floor. I am so sorry about Ethan. I had no idea he was going to look for you. I had a massive fight with him. It will never happen again. When I didn't say a word, Chloe pushed on. And also, I moved out. I gave up the apartment and moved back in with my mom for a bit. I want to clear my head. I gave a curt nod. Anything else? Is there really no chance for us anymore? Chloe looked up, heavy tears welling in her eyes. She choked out, Harrison, this entire past month, I have been thinking every single day, thinking about our past and wondering why we ended up like this. I know I was wrong. I really, truly know it. Can you please give me just one more chance? I stared at her. She looked incredibly haggard, a whole lot thinner than the vibrant girl in my memory. She used to constantly complain about wanting to lose weight, and now that she finally had, it was all because of this miserable mess. Chloe, I spoke up, my voice dead calm. Do you still remember our very first fight? Chloe froze for a second. I went on. Sophomore year, I forgot your birthday. You cried out of pure anger and screamed that I didn't care about you at all. I spent 3 whole days begging for your forgiveness, and finally bought you a necklace before you'd even look at me. Chloe nodded, her tears spilling over. But later on, you told me you didn't actually care about the gift. You just wanted to see if I would panic over losing you. I gave a bitter, slight smile. Back then, I thought, she's just a girl, so throwing a little tantrum is perfectly normal. I deeply cared about you, so I was always willing to coax you. But it has been 7 long years, Chloe. My smile completely faded. You have been using the exact same exhausting method to test me. You'd forget your keys and demand that I drop everything to deliver them. You'd get the sniffles and expect me to ditch work to keep you company. You'd stay late at the office, feel lazy, and demand I play chauffeur. Every single time, you would use the exact same excuse. I just wanted to see if you care about me. Chloe, I have coaxed you for 7 years, and I have been utterly exhausted for 7 years. Chloe opened her mouth, desperate to say something, but not a single sound came out. The whole disaster with Ethan was just the final straw. Honestly, even without him in the picture, we never would have made it. You were constantly demanding a sense of security, while I was running myself ragged trying to prove my love. That kind of relationship is just too damn exhausting. I can change, Chloe pleaded through her heavy tears. I will never act like this again. I swear to you. No need. I shook my head slowly. You can't change, and I don't want to wait around for it anymore. Either. I bent down, grabbed the insulated flask, and shoved it back into her hands. The soup. Take it back and drink it yourself. Don't ever come by here again. Just go live your own life. Chloe refused to take it. She just stood there and wept, her fragile shoulders shaking violently with every sob. I set the flask back on the ground, took a firm step back, and shut the door. The click of the latch was incredibly soft, yet it echoed like a gunshot in the dead quiet hallway. I leaned my back heavily against the door, listening to the muffled, suppressed sobs coming from the other side. They grew quieter and quieter until they finally vanished. The hollow sound of footsteps echoed, slowly fading into the distance. I stood frozen in that exact spot for a very long time, right up until my legs started to feel numb. Walking over to the window, I watched Chloe step out of the building entrance, her figure gradually vanishing beyond the neighborhood gates. The sunlight outside was brilliant, so blindingly bright it made me squint. I pulled out my phone and shot a text to Vivienne. What time exactly does the forum start next week? Vivienne replied almost instantly, 9 a.m. Sharp. What? Can't wait? I quickly typed back, yeah, I want to get there early. Sent. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, turned around, and walked straight into the kitchen. I started prepping lunch, and as I rhythmically chopped the vegetables, I found myself humming a soft tune. It was an old song, and I couldn't quite remember the name, but the melody was incredibly light and upbeat. Outside the window, the sky was a deep, brilliant azure, without a single cloud in sight for miles. Life moves on, doesn't it? Time is a seriously funny thing. When you stare directly at it, it drags on at a snail's pace. But the second you stop paying attention, it slips away without a trace. In the blink of an eye, half a year had already passed. My life became like a perfectly wound-up clock, ticking along steadily and with purpose, clocking into work, heading home, hitting the gym, and occasionally grabbing a casual bite with my colleagues. Jim even joked that I was looking more and more like a proper, grounded professional. I just smiled and shot back. Was I not proper before? You were proper back then, sure, but not like this. Jim paused to think about it and added, not this steady. I really liked that word. Living a steady life felt damn good. We had just secured a massive bidding project. At the victory celebration, everyone got completely rowdy and partied until midnight. I was forced to down quite a few drinks, but I wasn't totally wasted, just a comfortable kind of lightheaded. As the party finally broke up, Vivienne walked over, her eyes catching mine. Leaving together? No need. I'll grab a designated driver. She smiled slightly. I called one, too. Let's wait together. The two of us stood out by the hotel entrance. The night breeze blew past, carrying this sharp little chill. Vivienne lit a cigarette and handed one over to me. I took it but didn't light up, just held it casually between my fingers. She glanced over and asked, I heard you took a trip to Iceland a while back. Yeah. Went to see the Northern Lights. How was it? Freezing, I muttered. But beautiful. Vivienne just smiled. She chuckled. That description of yours explains absolutely nothing. I couldn't help but smile, too. Honestly, what I really wanted to say was that, standing out there in that massive world of ice and snow, watching those green lights dance across the sky, it just makes you feel like human beings are incredibly insignificant. All that intense love and bitter hate, all our endless dwelling and suffering, it all suddenly becomes totally unimportant. But I didn't say any of that out loud. Some feelings are just better kept to yourself. The designated drivers finally rolled up, and we got into our respective cars. Vivienne rolled down her window and called out, Hey, there's an architectural exhibition next week. Want to go together? Sure thing, I replied. Cool. I'll text you the time. Sounds good. The car started up and smoothly merged into the heavy traffic. I leaned back hard against the seat, just watching the bright city lights flash past the window. This city was always so blindingly bright, so undeniably bright that it made it completely impossible to tell day from night. Out of nowhere, my mind drifted to Chloe. She always used to say she wanted to go to Iceland to see the Northern Lights, claiming it was something she absolutely had to check off her bucket list. Well, now I had been there. But what about her? I shook my head, aggressively clearing the thought from my mind. Man, it was all in the past. Why was I even still dwelling on this stuff? Life just kept moving forward. The company took on a brand new project out of town, and I led the team over there to do a massive site survey. The trip dragged on for 2 whole weeks. The construction site was an absolute mess of flying dust, and I ran around wearing a hard hat every single day. By the time I dragged myself back to the hotel at night, I was so dead on my feet that I crashed face first onto the bed and passed out instantly. But one night, I dreamed of Chloe. The dream was bizarre, completely lacking any real plot or details. It was literally just her crying. Crying and crying, completely nonstop. And the sound of it just made my chest ache with this weird irritation. I asked her what she was crying about, but she wouldn't say a word. She just kept sobbing. Eventually, I completely lost my patience and snapped, Look, if you keep crying like this, I'm out of here. And then I actually walked away. As I left, I threw one glance back. She was still just standing there, crying. When my eyes snapped open, it wasn't even dawn yet. The hotel room was pitch black. I sat up and lit a cigarette. Right when it was about half smoked, my phone suddenly lit up the darkness. It was a photo from that architectural exhibition, sent by Vivienne. The caption read, This design is pretty interesting. I flipped through the photos one by one and texted back, Yeah, it's actually quite good. Vivienne replied instantly. Not asleep yet? I just woke up. I sent. I'm up, too, she replied. Still haven't adjusted to the jet lag yet. Vivienne was on a business trip abroad with a solid 7-hour time difference. I quickly did the math in my head. It had to be right around the afternoon over where she was at. The two of us casually texted back and forth, shooting the breeze about design projects and the books we'd been reading lately. And then, right toward the end, Vivienne dropped this on me. Harrison, have you ever thought about how we actually get along quite well? I just stared at that sentence for a long, long time. Eventually, I just replied, Yeah. She quickly shot back. Then, do you want to give us a try? I didn't text back right away. I walked heavily over to the window and pulled open the curtains. Outside, the morning sky was just barely beginning to break. The city hadn't completely woken up yet, making it as perfectly quiet as a painting. I stood there thinking about a lot of things, mainly reflecting on my crazy life over this past half year, thinking about those breathtaking northern lights out in Iceland, thinking about the choking dust on that construction site, and, unfortunately, thinking about the exact way Chloe was crying in my damn dream. Finally, I typed it out. Vivienne, you're wonderful, really. But right now, I'm just not ready to start a new relationship yet. Hit send. It took a solid minute before she finally replied. Understood. Then just pretend I never brought it up. I'm sorry, I replied. Hey, no need to apologize. Vivienne sent a quick smiley face emoji. It was my intrusion. Being friends is pretty good too. Right. Friends. I put down my phone with a heavy sigh. Outside, the sky was already bright. I washed my face with cold water and stared at the guy in the mirror. That old scar on my forehead had actually faded a lot. If you didn't look closely, you could barely even see it anymore. And that was a good thing. Some things in life are just meant to fade away slowly, exactly like this. On the very last day of the site survey, when we were finally packing up to head back to the city, the guys from the project team suggested we make a quick pit stop at this ancient town on the way back just to look around. Come on, since we're already here. Everyone started clamoring. I honestly just wanted to go straight back home, but I couldn't resist their relentless peer pressure, so we ended up going anyway. The ancient town was actually seriously old, totally decked out with cobblestone streets, crisp white walls, black tiles, tiny stone bridges, and quietly flowing water. Luckily, there really weren't that many tourists around. Just a few scattered here and there, strolling around taking their time. I ended up walking along the riverbank all by myself, stopping to watch an old man fish. His fishing rod didn't twitch even a millimeter, but the old guy wasn't in any rush whatsoever. He was just sitting there, completely still, like a literal statue of Buddha. The scenery caught my eye, a picture-perfect moment, so I whipped out my phone and snapped a quick photo. But right as I was about to tuck it away, my gaze drifted to the opposite side of the bridge. My breath hitched. Standing right there was Chloe, wearing a light, flowing summer dress. Her hair was chopped short, just grazing her shoulders, and she was gripping a coffee cup tightly in her hands. She was staring straight at me. Time seemed to freeze as we locked eyes across that small river for a few heavy seconds. I took the first step. I crossed the bridge and stopped right in front of her. "What brings you here?" I asked. Chloe nodded, her voice sounding a bit dry and tight. "Oh, what a coincidence," she murmured. She had definitely lost weight and looked a lot paler, but her eyes were so much calmer now. All that old frantic anxiety was totally gone. I noticed a new bracelet resting on her wrist. It was made of carved wood and looked beautifully weathered. "Why are you here?" I asked again. Chloe shifted slightly. "I came to stay here for a little while, just to write some things down." "Writing?" I echoed. "Yeah, just writing whatever pops into my head." She offered a small, awkward smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "What about you? What brings you all the way out here?" "Just stopping by on a business trip," I replied. Oh, for a long moment, neither of us said a single word. A small family of ducks swam past us in the river below, quacking loudly and sending wide ripples across the glassy water. "Lately, you." Chloe finally broke the silence, but immediately cut herself off. She tightened her grip on her coffee cup and whispered, "How have you been?" "Pretty good," I said smoothly. "What about you?" "I am doing okay too," she replied softly. "I am just trying to start over." I gave her a slow nod. I couldn't help but notice her finger was completely bare. The ring I had saved up 3 whole months of salary to buy was gone. "I returned the ring to your mother," Chloe blurted out, perfectly reading my mind. She added, "And all those expensive gifts you gave me, the ones that were just too valuable, I returned every single one of them." "There was no need to do that," I told her, but she insisted they absolutely had to be returned, completely unwavering in her decision. She said if she didn't give them back, she would never be able to find any real peace in her heart. I decided to drop it and stay quiet. Looking closer, I noticed the fine lines at the corners of her eyes were way more pronounced now. Half a year wasn't a terribly long time, but it certainly wasn't short, either. Still, 6 months was more than enough time to leave a heavy mark on someone's soul. "What about Ethan?" I finally asked. Chloe's expression instantly stiffened. After a tense beat, she shook her head and muttered, "We are not in touch anymore." He tried looking for me a few times later on, but I refused to see him. She looked up, meeting my gaze squarely. "I have thought things through. Some things simply cannot be avoided forever." I gave a low, unenthusiastic hum in response. Silence washed over us again, but honestly, it wasn't awkward this time. It was just a weirdly peaceful kind of quiet. We felt like two old friends meeting up again after a long, painful separation. We didn't know what to say, but we didn't really need to say anything at all. "I should get going," Chloe sighed. "I have an appointment to discuss some matters." "All right." She turned around to leave, then suddenly stopped and glanced over her shoulder. "Harrison? What?" She took a breath. "I am sorry." Her voice was barely a whisper, yet it rang out crystal clear. "I am truly sorry." I just looked at her, watching her face intently for a long, heavy moment. Then, I gave a firm nod. "I know. I didn't say, 'It is okay.' And I definitely didn't say, 'I forgive you.' It was just the simple truth. I know." Chloe's eyes immediately rimmed with red, but she held back the tears. Squeezing out a fragile smile, she whispered, "Well, goodbye." "Goodbye." She turned and left, walking slowly down that old cobblestone road. The wind caught her light dress, making her look like a fragile, withered autumn leaf. I just stood perfectly still, watching her figure slowly disappear into the shadows of the alley entrance. I pulled out a cigarette, struck a light, and smoked it halfway down before my phone buzzed. It was a coworker. "Harrison, where are you? We are about to head out." "Coming." I stubbed out my smoke and started walking back. On the way, I strolled past a quaint little shop showing off some quirky handmade ornaments right by the door. Curiosity got the best of me. I wandered inside and picked up a tiny, hand-carved wooden duck. It looked completely ridiculous, yet undeniably cute. "Is this a gift, or just for yourself?" the shop owner asked warmly. "For myself," I replied. "All right then, let me get this nicely wrapped up for you." I stepped out of the little shop, clutching my wooden duck. The afternoon sunlight was absolutely wonderful, soaking into my skin and leaving me feeling thoroughly warm. Out of nowhere, a distant memory hit me. A long, long time ago, Chloe had actually given me a small wooden carving of her own. It was a tiny rabbit. She always joked that I was just like a rabbit, gentle on the outside, but if you pushed me too far, I would definitely bite back. Where the hell did that wooden carving even end up? I honestly could not remember anymore. But then again, none of that mattered now. Once I got back to the company grind, it was the same old chaotic pile of issues. Endless meetings, drafting blueprints, trashing proposals, and grinding through brutal overtime. My days felt like a relentless copy and paste routine, just blurring into one another. Then, one late night, I was dragging myself home after another exhausting overtime shift. Right at my neighborhood entrance, I bumped into a frail old lady selling flowers. It was pitch black out, and the few blossoms left in her woven basket were already looking pretty wilted. "Young man, please buy a bouquet of flowers," the old lady pleaded kindly. "I will sell them to you for real cheap. Once these are sold, I can finally go home." I took pity, scanning the basket before picking out a bunch of sunflowers. They were pretty banged up, but that bright yellow color was stubbornly cheerful. "Buying these for your sweet girlfriend?" The old lady chuckled, wrapping them up. I shook my head and smiled. "No, just for myself. Keeping them for yourself is good." "Oh yes, keeping them for yourself is very good," the old lady happily rambled on. "Sometimes, you just have to keep the flowers all to yourself. There is just something about watching flowers bloom that instantly lifts your spirits." I handed over the cash, grabbed my new plants, and headed straight home. I dug up an old vase, filled it with fresh water, and arranged the bright sunflowers right in the middle of my dining table. Not gonna lie, it actually looked pretty incredible. I snapped a quick pic and posted it to my feed with the caption, "New member of the family." Almost instantly, my notifications started blowing up with likes and comments. My buddy Jim commented, "Director Harrison has some killer taste." Meanwhile, Mark had to chime in with, "Harrison keeping flowers alive? The sun must be rising in the west today." Vivian just dropped a cute smiley face. But then, my heart skipped a beat. Chloe liked it too. This was the very first time she had interacted with my page since our messy breakup. I stared at her name for a few heavy seconds, exhaled, and just swiped past it. I busied myself by changing the flower water and wiping down the table all over again. By the time I finished my little cleaning spree, It was already pushing 11 o'clock. I took a hot shower, but as I laid there in bed, sleep was the furthest thing from my mind. Suddenly, my phone lit up the dark room. It was a voice message from my mom asking, "Son, are you asleep yet? Your Aunt Sarah wants to set you up with a nice girl. I just sent you her picture. Take a good look." Bracing myself, I tapped on the image. It showed a quiet, bookish girl wearing glasses posing inside a library. I sighed and texted back, "Mom, I am really not looking to date anyone right now." She instantly shot back, "Do you know how old you are getting? Are you planning to stay a lonely bachelor forever?" I just smirked and typed, "Honestly, being a bachelor is actually pretty great." "Great for what exactly?" she scolded. "Hurry up and add her on Instagram. Just chat with her and see how it goes." Feeling utterly helpless, I rolled my eyes. I finally caved and replied, "Fine, fine, fine. I will add her." But spoiler alert, I absolutely did not add her. I just tossed my phone aside and stared blankly at the ceiling. The hard truth was, I had absolutely no clue what I even wanted out of life right now. Dating felt like an exhausting chore I just didn't have the mental energy for. And marriage, that was light years away. I honestly just wanted to keep living in my peaceful little bubble. Clocking in, clocking out, taking care of my plants, getting lost in books, and taking quiet evening walks. It was a ridiculously simple life, but it finally felt fulfilling. The silver moonlight spilled through my window, casting a bright white patch across the bedroom floor. Looking at it, I suddenly remembered that the freezing nights in Iceland looked exactly like this. The moonlight used to reflect off the endless snow, making the midnight hours look as bright as high noon. Back then, I stood freezing in the deep snow, my breath turning into thick white mist the second it hit the air. Our tour guide told us that making a wish under the northern lights was guaranteed to come true. But I did not even bother making a wish that night, simply because my mind was utterly blank. I didn't know what to ask for. Looking back on that icy night now, I realized that maybe I had already let go of my past pain. It wasn't some dramatic, deliberate choice to move on. It just happened completely naturally, like fresh snow melting into water, quietly soaking into the earth until it disappeared. I rolled over, pulled up the covers, and finally closed my eyes. The next day was Saturday, and I rarely got the luxury of sleeping in until my body woke up on its own. By the time I finally dragged myself out of bed, it was already pushing noon. Golden sunlight was pouring over my new sunflowers, their yellow petals fully unfurled and radiating a vibrant, energetic vibe. I whipped up a quick brunch with fried eggs, crispy bacon, and toast, brewed a fresh cup of coffee, and sat down to enjoy a slow, peaceful meal. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. It was Vivienne. She texted me asking, "Hey, are you free this afternoon? There is a pretty awesome architecture lecture happening over at the main exhibition hall." I thought it over for a second before typing back, "Yeah, I am in." She quickly replied, "Perfect. I will swing by and pick you up at 1 o'clock. I simply replied, "Sounds like a plan." After wiping my plate clean, I went to get dressed. I threw on a crisp white tee, some dark jeans, and layered a casual button-down shirt over the top. Staring at myself in the bathroom mirror, I noticed I had actually put on a little healthy weight, and my jawline was not looking quite so gaunt and sharp anymore. That was honestly a massive relief. It meant I was finally getting enough sleep to heal. Right on the dot, Vivienne pulled up downstairs. She was wearing a stunning dress with some light, natural makeup, giving her a much softer vibe than her usual office look. She instantly teased me. "Well, someone is looking pretty handsome today. You are not looking too bad yourself," I shot back with a grin. The lecture turned out to be incredibly gripping. The main speaker was a veteran architect who dropped some seriously fascinating perspectives. I was completely locked in, furiously jotting down notes the whole time. Vivienne was right there with me, and we kept exchanging knowing glances and nodding in total agreement. By the time the event finally wrapped up, the evening sky had already turned a deep, dusky blue. Vivienne turned to me and asked, "Hey, want to grab a bite to eat together?" "Sure thing," I agreed. We ended up at this cozy little spot famous for its comforting, home-cooked meals, ordered 3 hearty dishes and a warm soup, and just chatted our hearts out while eating. We geeked out over the lecture topics, debated the latest industry trends, and even argued over some movies we had both watched recently. But right in the middle of dinner, Vivienne suddenly dropped a bomb. "Have you seen your ex-girlfriend at all since the split?" My chopsticks froze in midair for a painfully long second. "Recovering," I replied casually. I ran into her exactly once, and it has been total radio silence ever since. We honestly just exchanged a quick hello. Vivienne just nodded thoughtfully and thankfully did not push the issue any further. She quietly ladled herself some warm soup and took a slow, deliberate sip. After dinner, as we walked back to my apartment building, she suddenly stopped and said, "Harrison, I am officially transferring to the New York branch next month." I totally froze in my tracks. "Wait, so soon?" "Yeah," she sighed. "The headquarters over there is severely short-staffed right now." Vivienne locked eyes with me, her voice dropping as she added, "So, about the last time I asked if you wanted to give us a real shot. To be totally honest, I had some completely selfish motives back then. I was secretly hoping that if we worked out, you might actually want to move to New York with me." I offered her a gentle smile and joked, "Well, you really should have led with that earlier. But hey, I guess it is never too late to put your cards on the table." Vivienne's face lit up with a hopeful smile. "So, what do you say? Just think it over. There are way more massive opportunities and unlimited room for your career to explode in New York." I took a deep breath, genuinely thought about it for a moment, but softly shook my head. "I am actually doing really well right here." She let out a small, knowing laugh and whispered, "I knew you were going to say that." Vivienne didn't even blink. "Well then," she said, a faint smile on her face, "I wish you the absolute best out here. Both of you." We stepped out of the car, standing in the cool night air outside my building. The amber streetlights stretched our shadows out, long and thin against the pavement. "Come here, give me a hug," Vivienne murmured, opening her arms wide. I leaned in. It was a brief, feather-light embrace, pulling away almost the second our shoulders touched. She just gave a casual wave and said, "All right, I'm taking off." Sliding back into the driver's seat, she fired up the engine and sped off into the night. I watched her red taillights bleed into the dark, completely fading around the corner. I stood there in the silence for a long moment before finally turning on my heel to head upstairs. Catching my reflection in the elevator mirror, I realized I looked completely calm. My eyes were crystal clear. "Not bad at all," I muttered to myself. The second I walked through my front door, I headed straight to the kitchen to swap out the cloudy water for my dying sunflowers. Their bright yellow petals were drooping, clinging on for dear life, but they hadn't dropped just yet. I brushed my fingers against them soft, almost icy to the touch. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. It was Mom. "Hey, honey, did you add that girl's number yet?" she badgered. Yeah, I added her. I sighed, just trying to get her off my back. "Well, don't just sit there. Talk to her." She shot back. "What is the actual point of adding her if you're not going to say anything?" I rolled my eyes, brushing her off. "We're talking, Mom. We're chatting right now." I hit end call, practically collapsing onto the sofa, and clicked on the TV to drown out the silence. Flipping mindlessly through the channels, I stumbled onto a classic flick. It was Stephen Chow's A Chinese Odyssey. Right as the fairy on screen looked up and whispered, "My beloved is a matchless hero," a completely unexpected smirk broke across my face. Honestly, I had zero clue why I was even smiling. It just hit me right then. Life is ridiculously unpredictable and kind of hilarious. People walk into your life, stick around, and then drift away just like scenes in a movie. You can never predict what the next plot twist is going to be. But honestly, who cares? You just have to play your own damn part. The credits finally started rolling, and that familiar, nostalgic ending theme echoed through my empty apartment. I killed the power to the TV and drifted over to the living room window. Outside, the pitch-black night was pierced by thousands of glowing windows from the city blocks around me. Neon signs pulsed out in the distance, while the gridlocked traffic below wove together like a glowing mechanical spiderweb. I just stood there, soaking it all in for a long time, before firmly pulling the curtains shut. It was finally time to sleep. Tomorrow. Tomorrow is a brand new day,